You divide. Right now it's 1.1 times x, so you're dividing by 1.1. So x should be 3. What do you do on b? You add 5 to both sides. And this is a lot of problems happen right here because of that negative. Use your calculator. Plug in negative 18 plus 5. That's totally fine. I am fine with you using your calculator for that. I would love it if you didn't have to, because then you're developing that mental math more. But I'm not going to make you go without a calculator on a problem like this. So use what is at your disposal. What do you get? Negative 13. And the last one? You would subtract 7. Again, a negative minus 7 is going to be a negative 11. Okay? Okay. Like I said earlier, you must show your work on these, okay? Because now we're getting into two-step problems. And you can't just look at it and go, oh, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and here's my number, and say x equals 42. I mean, you can. You won't get credit for it. So make sure that you are showing your steps to solving each one of these. Either write the problem down again or copy and paste and drop it into your assignment. That's fine too. But then show me the steps you do to that, okay? Okay, now here's how it works. This can be a little bit tricky for some because you're very used to PEMDAS at this point, right? You do parentheses and then exponent, and then you multiply and divide, and then you add and subtract. That's what you do when you have a bunch of numbers and you're simplifying, okay? What you do when you have a bunch of numbers and variables and you're solving for some variable, when you're isolating some variable, you are going to, we're very zoomed in here. Hold, please. There we go. Gwen, can you turn your thing on? Kylie, Olivia, I can't see your screens. Turn your Bluetooth on. Sorry, Olivia M.
Now can you see it?
No.
It says that you're watching it.
It says for me that you're offline. I wonder if I can refresh.
I'm on student.
You can see that I'm watching it?
Yeah.
No, I know you all can, but I'm surprised she can when I can't see her stuff, that she can see that I am. It says you're offline for me.
Maybe refresh.
Weird. Okay, anyway. So if you reverse PEMDAS, okay, if we switch it around, add and subtract should be the tail end, right? That's where you're going to start in today's lesson. You're going to start with adding or subtracting, whatever could be added or subtracted. And then your next step, step number 2, is where we're going to multiply or divide. Okay, so just think when I'm solving for a variable, reverse PEMDAS. Add and subtract first, then multiply and divide. Okay, so take a look at this first one. This is what you would call a two-step equation. We're trying to get x by itself. So it's tempting to say, well, get the 2 out of there, but that's not the first thing you want to do. We want to add and subtract first. So if I want to get this plus 3 out of there, how do I get rid of it? Subtract 3, right? We do the inverse operation. We subtract it. So now you have this, and this is what I want to see. I want to see that minus 3, and then I want you to rewrite the problem. 2x equals 12. Now it's a one-step equation because we did one step already, okay? Now it looks exactly like what you did last week. What do? How? You divide. So we're going to divide by 2, and x is 6, okay? Now if you want to check it, plug it back in. 2 times 6 plus 3 should equal 15. 2 times 6 is 12. 12 plus 3 is 15. Then you do PEMDAS in order, right? once you're plugging the number in. But to solve for it, you're going to reverse it. So reverse PEMDAS. So look at letter B. X over 4 minus 3 equals 7. If we are reversing PEMDAS, what comes first? Add 3, right? Add and subtract first. So we're going to add the 3. And we get x over 4, rewrite the problem, equals 10. Okay, now we do the multiply and divide. What are we multiplying by? The 4. So if you multiply by 4, 4 over 4 is 1, but you have to do it to both sides. So you get x equals 40. And again, if you plug it in, 40 divided by 4 is 10, minus 3 is 7. So you can very quickly check your work on these to make sure that you have the right thing. Okay? Questions on that? Okay. So we're going to set up and solve a problem here. And usually it's the setup that gets a little tricky for some. So take your time with these. Think about what's going on. And then we'll go from there. It says you're making a bulletin board to advertise community service opportunities in your town. You plan to use half a sheet of construction paper for each ad. You need 5 sheets of construction paper for the title banner. Okay? You have 18 sheets of construction paper. How many ads can you make? So you have a total of 18. You need 5 sheets of paper for the title banner, but then it's a half a sheet per ad. We want to know how many we can make.
=
18 equals
5 plus 5.
5 plus 5?
Yeah. 5 and 5. Oh no. What half? I can do that. I just first 5.
I mean, you're headed in the right direction, Olivia.
I did 1/2 x plus 5 equals 18.
Yes. So if it's a half a sheet per ad, I would go 1/2 sheet per ad. I did A, she did X. I don't care what variable you use, as long as you're using a variable here. But then it's plus the 5 sheets that they're going to need for that title banner. Okay? That should equal the total number of sheets, which is 18.
Is it okay if we turn the fractions to decimals?
Yes, as long as they're nice decimals. If it's like 0.6 repeating, then no. If it's 2/3, then it has to be 2/3, because otherwise you have to round and then you get a rounded answer. We want exact. Okay, so this is your setup. What do you do to solve that? Take away the 5 first. Reverse PEMDAS. So subtract first. You get 13 equals 1/2 A. How do we get rid of the 1/2? So
Times 1/2 by 30. Well, like both sides.
not times 1/2. Times what? The reciprocal times 2, right? So here's your options. Yes, you could say 13 equals 1/2 A. Right now, it's 1/2 times A, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So yes, 13 divided by 1/2 is what we're doing. But do you know what 13 divided by 1/2 is? It's not 6.5. But everyone wants to say it's 6.5, right? You cannot divide by a fraction and get something bigger. You divide by a fraction, well, this kind of fraction, and you're going to get something bigger, okay? So instead, what you should do is multiply. Did I just say the same thing?
Yeah. But like
You can't divide by a fraction and get something smaller. So 2 times 13 is 26. So your A would be 26. So you can run 26 ads. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. If you divided by 1/2, think of it this way. 13 divided by 1/2 is the same as 13 times what? When dividing fractions, don't be shy. Flip the second guy and multiply instead. So 13 times 2, okay? So yes, you're dividing by a fraction, but don't divide by a fraction. Just multiply by the reciprocal, okay? Okay, so think about this one. Suppose you used a quarter sheet of paper for each ad and 4 full sheets for the title banner. Then how many ads could you make? So what's your new equation gonna look like? This, Olivia.
Is it 1/4 x plus 5 equals
1/4 x plus what?
plus 5? Oh, 4.
Plus 4, right. That one's plus 4. So still 18 total sheets, but now you would do this. So now what's your first step? Take away the 4. Okay, so 1/4 x equals 14. Now what? Now you multiply by 4. So you're going to go times 4 times 4. So x equals 56. So you can run 56 ads if you do a fourth a sheet with 4 for the title. Questions on that? Okay. Here's where my reverse PEMDAS gets a little tricky. Okay. There is a new type of equation that looks like this that uses the division bar. Does anyone remember when I introduced PEMDAS to you, what I said a division bar does?
It's parentheses.
It's like parentheses. Okay. What that means is if we're treating that like parentheses, then we want to think through what those parentheses would be doing. Okay. God bless you. So it's not quite reversing PEMDAS anymore. Now it's multiply first and then add and subtract. The only time you do this is with a big division bar like you see here, okay? All of the other ones are gonna be reverse PEMDAS. So just keep in mind when you see this division bar in a problem, you're gonna multiply first, okay? So if you have 2 terms up in your numerator, a big division bar, a 3 below, equal to negative 12, your first step is get that 3 out of there. How do we do it? Multiply by 3. So I'm going to multiply by 3 here. That gets me 1. And then multiply by 3 here. So x minus 7 equals a negative 36. What's your next step? Yes, ma'am.
How does 3 times 3 make you 1?
So that's a great question. It's not 3 times 3. Right now, this 3 is in the denominator, which means that's acting like the number 1/3, right? We just don't have the 1 up top, but it's like saying essentially there's a 1 here. We're dividing by 3, which is 1 divided by 3. So if I multiply that by 3, that's 1. Does that make sense? Yeah. So even though it just looks like 3, it's really the fraction 1/3 that you're working with, okay? Okay, so then your next step is to do what? Add 7 to both sides. So you get x equals negative 36 plus 7 is? Negative 29. Okay. Okay, I'm going to leave that up there. You do letter B. Work it out. What'd you do first? CK, what'd you do first?
4 times 4 there, and 5 times.
Yes, multiply by 4 first, right? You're going to multiply by that denominator. That will go away. You get x plus 2 equals 20. Who wants it? Richie, what'd you do next? Subtracted 2. So take away 2. You get x equals 18. We all get that? Good. Yes, ma'am.
Wait, how do you do the beginning part, like the 4 times?
So this is saying we're dividing by 4 right now, right?
Oh,
So the
dividing by 4.
inverse operation is to multiply by 4. So we multiply by 4 on this side, which is going to reduce this to 1. You don't distribute that because it gets rid of it by doing these two together. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Don't try to send this 4 to everything else.
Oh, and then 2's left over, so that's why it's.
So you have x plus 2 left over here once the 4's go away, right? And then 5 times 4 is 20. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What if your variable is a negative? Let's see. What do you do first in this problem? If you reverse PEMDAS, subtract the 8. Okay, so we're going to subtract 8 and subtract 8. You get negative 5. What's on the left side of your equation right now after we've done this? A negative t. What number is the coefficient to t? A negative 1. Okay, so when there's a negative there, it's always a negative 1. So this is like a negative 1. Now you have options. You could multiply or you could divide because they're going to get you the same result. Typically, I divide because right now it's like you're multiplying. So I would divide by a negative 1. What happens when you divide something by a negative? It becomes positive. Or if it is already positive, it becomes negative, right? So it'll be the opposite answer of what you had. So negative 5 divided by negative 1 is a positive 5. And that'll be your t value. So when you have just a negative in front of your variable, your answer ends up being the opposite of that last step that you got to. Okay? Yeah.
I did plus t and then I subtracted 3 to the 8.
Oh, you can do that too. Yeah, did anyone else do that? Negative t plus 8 equals 3. She went minus 3, and then plus t to the other side. So it's t equals 8 minus 3 is 5.
Would that work for all equations?
Does anyone else do it that way? Okay. You may do it that way. You may do it the way that I showed you. They're both great. They both work. When it says to justify each step, what they're looking for is which property did I use to get there. So like on this one, we use the subtraction property, right? So this would be your subtraction property. This one would be the division property because we did division to isolate our t. Okay, so when it says justify the steps, they just want to know which property did you use. I used subtraction and then I used division. I'm not sure that I'm going to be super picky on those, but that's what it means. How we doing? Home stretch? Okay, so here's 4 problems. I've taught you how to do them all. I'm going to give you a few minutes right now to try all of them and make sure you're doing the right process on the right problem. And I will come around. If you have any questions, I will gladly help you. If you don't, we'll go over these. Let's see how you did. What did you get for letter A? What's your final answer?
X equals -5.
Anybody else get x equals -5? Yes, let me show you how. What did you do for your first step?
I minus 12 on both sides.
Yes, take away 12. So you get 5x equals a -25. Please be really careful with negatives. That's where all the mistakes happen, okay? Pay attention to negatives. Divide by 5, you get x equals -5, okay? Second one, what'd you do first? Add what? Add 3. So 9 equals m divided by 7. What's your next move?
I multiply 7.
Yep, then multiply by 7. Multiply by 7. This is 1. So 63 equals m. Is that what you got?
Yeah.
One person. Good. Okay, this one was the different one. There's the division bar. What do you do first? Multiply. So we're going to multiply by 4. We are not distributing the 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Make it go away. So y minus 1 equals negative 8. Add 1. Be careful with those negatives. What is negative 8 plus 1? Negative 7. Yes. Last one. Two-step equations. What did you do first here?
Oh, I added 4.
Add 4, as you should. So 13 equals a negative x. Then what'd you do? Divide by a negative 1. So this goes away. X equals a negative 13. Good? Questions?
Wait, C was